Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss about gathering the news. Before we are going to our material today, let me introduce our members. So the first is Eviana Rismawati, and then Risma Alfiani, and then Tuti Lasmiasi, and Rika Setyaningrum. Gathering the news has four components. The first is news coverage. Second is covering a beat. The third is responsibilities of a beat reporter. And the last is the tools of reporting. For the first components is news coverage will be explained by Eviana Rismawati.
Now I will explain about news coverage. News coverage is in large part a matter of careful organization. But the organization, to be effective, needs to be fired with imagination, factual knowledge, and tireless effort and persistence. Reporters are not called like men for nothing. News gathering requires energy. On a standard newspaper, news gathering begins at the city desk. Although radio, television, and the news magazines do not use the useful term city desk, they each have a director whose position corresponds to the city editor. An examination of the city desk operation of typical medium-sized daily will show in outline how any kind of news gathering system functions. The city editor, a man of 35, experienced on 3 or 4 other papers. Call him Miller. Miller's first task after he gets to his desk is to glance through the overset. The long broadsheets of news that were put in type for yesterday's paper but not used. With a black pencil, he quickly crossed out a number of stories no longer usable. In some stories, he changes today and tomorrow to read yesterday and today. He ellipses some of the stories and puts them aside. He checks them quickly, edits here and there, puts one aside for a new lead. Next, Miller has a conference with the Wire editor, telling him what news he expects for the day. Together, they decide what the play stories are to be. First, he has a cup of coffee at the corner desk, where he chats with cronies and invariably picks up story ideas. Back in the office, Miller writes the story he has picked up. He takes some straight notes out of a pocket and composes his daily column of local anecdotes. The reporters return, one by one, to write their stories. They tell him when they have failed to complete their assignments or when they are developing new stories. Miller's pencil cuts through the copy as it comes across his desk, paring, editing, sharpening. Then the copy goes to the copywriter. WH writes heads for it and gives it final polishing before sending it on the composing room for the linotype.
Okay, the next slide is about covering the bit. Newsmen have developed two ways to organize a bit, both logical. Number one is the subject approach, and number two is the geographical approach. Number one is the subject approach. The subject approach, in which a reporter covers news related to a limited subject or group of subjects, is used by the big city newspaper. It calls specialists. It is a reporter who covers only news of education, a science man, an aviation man, and an entertainment man. When the paper is wealthy enough to support experts in special field, and when there is enough newsworthy material to keep the man busy, the subject approach can be very efficient. Much of the most effective reporting comes from men and women working under this plan. Number two is the geographical approach. The geographical approach, in contrast, groups together news centers that can conveniently be covered by a single reporter. This is the most usual bit on the small newspaper and in newsrooms of radio or TV stations, which use less news than newspaper do. Newsmen often used both methods in planning a bit. For example, one reporter covers farm news and sport news, and another man is assigned all local business news, but this is not enough to keep him busy. So the same man is taken for general assignment.
Next chapter is responsibilities of a beat reporter. There are the kind of tips for reporter to corroborate the story or get the complete facts. The first is make sure that an office knows. A smart reporter, on his first visit, he must introduce himself so that the staff will remember him. It can be done by writing down his name and telephone number for its news contact. Sometimes it is easier to arrive at a friendly, casual relationship with a stenographer than it is with the boss. The second one is find out what's going on in an office in all kinds of ways. One of the best is chatting with people. Sometimes the janitor or the man across the hall notices things that the regulars in the office consider too routine to mention. Get the boss as a favor to tell you what he thinks are really important jobs his office or department is supposed to do. The next is show how to establish rapport with news sources. If reporter notice a krill and a fly in the recorder's office, reporter doesn't need a very high IQ to figure out the conversation. All of this doesn't mean that reporter need to be funny. Don't forget, if the recorder wants something, he will probably start talking about the collection of jazz records or whatever the special interest is. The next one is good manners are essential. It is an important part of reporters' talk in trade. Reporters are people, and if they behave in a civilized manner, they will get civilized treatment in return. Real reporters take their hats off just as frequently as stockbrokers or grocers or school teachers. It is important to remember that reporters are the experts on news. Reporters can increase efficiency and production if they obtain from news sources. Reporting has traditional responsibilities. Every reporter knows that newsmen keep promises. Responsibility means that you keep appointments and punctually. Most beat reporters find it a good idea to keep a features book. This features book is a good place to get down features ideas or answers for special stories. Although a beatman's primary assignment is to make sure that the regular or routine news is covered, that the paper is informed if the day-to-day activities centering on the beat.
Now I will explain about the tools of reporting. traditional reportorial tools are a soft black copy pencil and a wad of copy paper. Newspaper reporters are doubtless guilty of a certain amount of professional satisfaction when they assess that these tools are superior to a ballpoint pen, for example, and neat spiral-bound notebook. And then report the reason that 4 or 5 sheets of office copy paper seized from the desk drawer and folded into pocket size make handy and inexpensive notepads, and that copy pencils furnished by the business office, sometimes reluctantly, are also convenient and cheap to use. The disadvantages are that copy paper is soft and perishable, and copy pencil writing smears into illegible smoke if it gets handled much. If the newspaper or radio TV reporter gathers his material in the morning, he almost always writes the story or phones it into the newsroom by noon. The notes often get dog-eared and crumbled. The copy pencil scroll gets smoked, but the notes are still entirely legible and meaningful to the reporter who wrote them just a few hours earlier. In the 20th century, the typewriter, the camera, the tape recorder, and the telephone have become increasingly important to reporters. The camera has been recognized as an excellent reporting instrument since the day it was invented. Matthew Brady's inspired photographs of the Civil War are among the most impressive and informative records we have of that period in history. Although radio newsmen think of the tape recorder as their special instrument, and it certainly is a news-gathering implement of particular value for broadcasting, a tape recorder can be used in a somewhat similar manner in television news. For example, live interview and the exact words and accents and emphasis of a speech or a meeting. The telephone is frequently unsatisfactory for news gathering. A reporter can usually conduct an interview most efficiently when he is face to face with the person he is interviewing. Although a fact is a fact, however it is communicated, there are subtleties surrounding the relations of facts that may not be revealed in a phone conversation. But in radio reporting, newsmen find it worthwhile to gather much of their local news by phone because speed is more essential to their work than subtlety, details, or quantity of information. Okay, that's all for our presentation today. Thanks for your attention. Bye bye.